sound like, oh my goodness, what does this have to do with my job? But this has a whole lot to do with your job because, like everything else in this world, you live in a political arena. And I mean like everything else in this world. So how many of you are all on social media? Do you think it's very political? It's extremely political. Everything we do is political anymore. And when I say politics, I don't necessarily mean the government. I mean, even within social media, we have politics between people. Excuse me. So the other part that you need to understand is the hierarchy that you work within. Whether you provide services in a day service arena, employment, an ICF, or waiver services, they're all Medicaid services. They're all funded by Medicaid. So in every state, there is a single Medicaid state agency, which means there's only one. The federal government requires that. The federal government doesn't want to come and talk to 88 county boards of DD. And they absolutely don't want to talk to, I don't know how many counties there are in the United States of America, but kind of do the math. 50 times 88 may not be inaccurate. That's how many governmental entities that they would have to try and talk to and try to manage. So the single Medicaid state agency in Ohio is the Department of Medicaid. The Department of Medicaid has certain responsibilities and cannot give away certain responsibilities. They cannot give away the responsibility of determining eligibility. They cannot give away the responsibility of funding for the services. They cannot give away the responsibility for authorizing services. We're going to talk about that word a lot in the 3-day training. And they cannot give away the responsibility of reducing or increasing services. Okay, so what that means is if anybody tells you that they're authorizing, increasing, decreasing, or determining whether or not somebody is eligible for something and they're not working for the Department of Medicaid, that is not a true statement. That's not what they're doing. So what we did in Ohio, and this is not dissimilar to some other states, is in Ohio, we have what we call sister Medicaid state agencies. There's actually an interagency agreement between the Department of Medicaid, mental health, aging, and DODD. Those are the 3 Medicaid sister state agencies. They are authorized to do tasks for the Department of Medicaid. Those tasks do not include authorizing, increasing, decreasing services, or determining eligibility. There's a whole bunch of other tasks that it does include, and we're actually going to go through all of those. The reason why I'm telling you all of this is so that you understand who you're talking to, what authority they have, and what place do you have within the context of that discussion in those meetings. So within the Department of Developmental Disabilities, which is what we're going to be talking about during these trainings, that department is able to create administrative rules that govern how services are supposed to happen within the context of rules that are written by the Department of Medicaid. So if you go down to the bottom of every single administrative rule that we're going to go through, it'll tell you what authorizes them. They are state laws. Okay, so Administrative rules don't stand all by themselves. There has to be a law behind them, because administrative rules are not law. Administrative rules actually amplify law. So they make it more clear. Administrative rules do not add to or subtract from what's already in state law or in federal regulations, because they can't. They cannot be contrary to what's in law. So their purpose is to expand upon the law, which is what most people read. Most people don't typically go and look up 42 CFR, the Federal Register, which, by the way, are all the federal laws around Medicaid services in the country. The other thing I want you to understand is Medicaid is not the same in every state. So even though it is a federal participation program, every state has latitude within the confines of 42 CFR, the Federal Register, to create Medicaid programs. There are things that they have latitude to do, and there are things that they do not have latitude to do. By the way, does everybody know who pays what in the state of Ohio when it comes to a Medicaid service? How much the state pays versus the federal government? Anybody want to take a stab? Is anybody awake? Does anybody have a smile on their face? Right now, we're kind of in flux because of the CARES Act. So I'm not going to tell you all of the minor adjustments that are being made to how much states pay and federal government pay because of the CARES Act. But in Ohio, it's approximately 65 cents on every dollar is paid for by the federal government, and 35 cents, which are referred to as matching funds, are paid by the state of Ohio. So guess who's in charge? Guess who has ultimate say-so? Anybody want to take a guess? Okay, I'm going to make people guess.
You're going to have to call on people.
I'm sorry?
The federal government.
I was going to say, if you ever heard the term follow the money, you'll find the power? You ever heard that before?
Yeah, 60-40 split. So the federal government has 60% control and, well, 100% control.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the federal government does come and do surveys of the state of Ohio. They do look at the Medicaid state plan that has been approved by them, that was submitted by the state of Ohio. And they do make sure that the state of Ohio is following what they wrote. It's kind of like, anybody heard about ISO 9000? Anybody an IT person? Been around IT people? So basically what the federal government does is says, okay, state, you said you were going to do this. They come in and make sure that they are. Okay, so the feds don't just give the state of Ohio the money and say, have a nice day. They do make sure that every state does what they said that they were going to do and what was approved to be done. So within this hierarchy, there is also a Medicaid state plan. It's about 300 pages long. By the way, it's on DODD's website if you ever want to go read it, if you're as crazy as I am, because it elegantly outlines what the federal government has approved as far as Medicaid services and how they will be conducted in the state of Ohio. And it is specific all the way down to the Medicaid waiver. It's specific to programs that are not called entitlements. So I'm also going to give you a little delineation on entitlements versus choice of state programs. So in Ohio and every other state in the union, the ICF, Intermediate Care Facility Program, is an entitlement program. What that means is if you are eligible, you are entitled to it. Another entitlement program in Ohio is the Medicaid card. If you are eligible for it, you are entitled to it. Nobody can tell you no. That's what entitlement means. There are no specific number of people, and when we get to 50,000, we've run out. Sorry for your luck, you go on a waiting list. There is no waiting list for entitlement programs because by definition, if you are eligible, you are entitled. The reason I bring that up is because the criteria to be eligible for waiver services, which is what we are going to talk about during this training, is you must have an ICF level of care because waiver services are in lieu of the entitlement program. The reason why we call them waiver services is because people have waived their right to the entitlement. So once upon a time, I'm going to go back in history a little bit. Once upon a time, a bunch of parents got together and said, you know what? My son and my daughter need services, but I really don't think they need that. We would like something else. And that's when we created waiver services. So if you look at the services that are included in a Medicaid waiver, they are not all the services that are included in an ICF. So for example, and this is the biggest example, in an ICF, room and board is included in the service. So the roof over your head, the meals that you eat, the clothing on your backs, the furniture in your room is all included in the ICF program. So is OT, PT, speech, and psychological services. In fact, about the only thing that's not included are medical services. So if you see an MD, you use your Medicaid card. If you go to the hospital, you use your Medicaid card. In a waiver, we have a menu of services that's pared down from that. And the largest differentiation is that room and board is not included in any waiver service by federal definition. It cannot be. You can't ask the federal government to include it because it's not includable. Neither are any of the therapies. So when a person has a Medicaid card in the state of Ohio, it depends upon where they're getting services as to what that Medicaid card covers. So if you are receiving waiver services and you need speech pathology services, you use your Medicaid card. You're living in an ICF, the ICF pays for it. Okay? So I want you to think about this for a minute. Everybody who is on a waiver has to have an ICF level of care first before they can become eligible for a waiver service. By the way, that includes level 1. So the definition of a waiver service is you must otherwise be eligible for and in need of quote unquote institutionalization.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
I'm sorry?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So is waiver eligibility decided at the state level or the federal level?
It is decided at the state level within the confines of federal regulations. So what that means is if you go to 42 CFR, they outline the minimum definition that would determine eligibility. In the state of Ohio, we actually have a level of care rule. And that level of care rule tells you exactly what deficit areas, what needs you would have to have at a minimum to be eligible.
So eligibility is decided at the state level, and then types of waiver is accounted for in the county level?
That's a really good question. So I'm sure that a lot of you have heard, well, George doesn't need an IO waiver. He only needs a level 1 waiver. Anybody heard that? The eligibility for a level 1 waiver is exactly the same as an IO waiver. Exactly the same. The level 1 waiver was created not because it was a waiver for less needy people. It was created to refinance county boards. I'm just going to come right out and say it. So what happened is through the evolution of services, and I'm going to go all the way back to about 1985, county boards were providing all the day services for people with disabilities, whether or not there was federal funding for it or not. Back then, there was another program called the Community Alternative Funding Source Program, which, by the way, was an entitlement program in Ohio, which doesn't exist anymore. But lots and lots and lots of people were getting day services that were being 100% funded out of county levy funds. So as all these other programs were developed and came along, like the IO waiver, there were tens of thousands of people that were still being funded totally by local levy funds. So the way we cured that is we came up with the level 1 waiver. The original design of the level 1 waiver was not supposed to include any homemaker personal care. It was only supposed to be day services. Well, the federal government said, wait a minute, let me get this right. The person has an ICF level of care. These services have to be sufficient enough so that the person, if they get these, will not need institutionalization, and you're going to have no residential component to it. Is that what you're trying to tell us, Ohio? And we said, let's throw some residential in there. And that's how we got the $5,000 cap and up to $7,500 if it's an emergency and blah, 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 blah. So since then, we put 15,000, I think it's up to 17,000 people now on the level 1 waiver in the state of Ohio to refinance. In fact, we coined it the refi waiver. We refinance county board day services. And now, about 10, 12 years later, a lot of the folks that went on that waiver now need what? A lot more than they did 10 or 12 years ago, which has created a whole nother problem, folks. Because now we got 17,000 people on this waiver that we know at some point in time are going to need more than they needed when they went on that waiver. We're going to talk about how all of these things interplay and how you do your jobs when you go to ISP meetings, because believe me, they are all vitally important. If you don't understand the parameters of the services that people are eligible for, entitled to, and how you can effectuate change in those people's lives, I say this a lot, and I don't say it in a demeaning manner, folks, because I see a lot of people, and believe me, I've been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ISP meetings. And the one thing you will learn from me throughout this training is when I go to an ISP meeting, I am not a bump on a log. A lot of people go to ISP meetings to admire the process. They think they're there so that they're going to get told what their job is, what they are supposed to do. That is not the reason why you go to ISP meetings. You go to ISP meetings to be an integral part of the team decision. Now, I'm going to ask a question that you all better know the answer to. Who knows the individual the best in that meeting? And if you don't raise your hand and you go to ISP meetings, I'm going to I need your address so I can come over and have a talk with you. You guys know the individual the best because you're the one who spends the most time with them. So you are surrounded by people in an ISP meeting who spend how much time with the individual? Someone pipe up. How many times does the
5 minutes a year.
SSA, how much time does the SSA spend with the individual each year? Dave? Can't hear you.
Probably about 5 to 15 minutes.
It might be a little bit more than that.
Less than an hour.
Does that make them all knowledgeable?
No.
I'm not trying to be demeaning to SSAs, folks. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you set in a reality picture. The reality is you know the most, you see the most, you hear the most, you experience the most. You need to use that in effectuating a good plan for the person that you're sitting there for. That makes sense? Someone do this. Someone do this. Someone do that. All right. I want to hear from you all about who you are, what you do, who your favorite tech canary is.
Okay, I'm gonna go next, and then I'm gonna call on each one of them to introduce themselves. So I am Missy Beheimer. I have worked for BradyWare for 15 years. I started working with just basic not-for-profits. Gary Brown and Betty Collins, who you'll meet next, their firm merged into BradyWare, and they had this long-term care component, and it seemed to fit well with me. So I started driving from Dayton to Columbus every day for 2 years to work with Gary and Betty. Fell in love with the field and then the clients that they served, and moved my family here to Columbus. And so I've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years. I feel like I know the tip of the iceberg where Gary knows the iceberg, so we're probably all at different levels here. But BradyWare has a whole division where we just work with providers. We do trainings like this. We do, work on, any kind of consulting they need, any kind of rules, regulations, interpreting, best practices, how to be most cost effective, waiver billing, rate projections. Gary does a lot of work with people. He said he's been to ISP meetings. That's because our clients have had issues and have asked him to attend those and help in negotiation. So we have a lot of that. And then we just do all of the regular accounting, the boring part of the job also. But so that's a little bit about me. I'm going to have Betty Collins go next. She is our partner in crime in this. And then I'm going to call on each one of you. And I'm going to put a slide up after Betty so you can kind of know what we want you to talk about. Okay, Betty.
I'm Betty Collins, and I'm with BradyWare. I have been there since 1988, a very long time, and I've worked with Gary Brown since 1995. And people in this field are very interesting, and I love the clients that I get to work with. But I really like being on calls like this or at trainings like this because I get your perspective. I'm the accountant, okay? It's a different perspective. Your perspective brings it home for me. And so I still learn every time I attend one of these. And so I'm here today just with that. And you can give me a lot of sympathy because I work with Gary Brown every day. He's actually not scary as he looks, so it's all good. But and then I do a lot with just business and accounting and all those types of things that we do. That's our day job. But working with providers is probably one of the most passionate things. And being engaged with you guys is what gives me good perspective as to what you go through. And I like to hear about that and learn more as well. So that's who I am.
Thanks, Betty. Okay, I'm going to put a slide up here. maybe. And clicker isn't working. Oops. Okay, so here is kind of a little template, if everybody can see that, of what we would like to hear in your introductions. And the more detail, the more we're going to get to know you. So I'm just going to call on people as I see them on my screen here. So hopefully I don't forget anyone. Lisa, I'm here, horrible names, T-A-U-N-T, the one with the
It's-
bird.
Yeah, it's taunt. Yeah,
Taunt,
like to
okay, just
tease
like
and
it looks.
taunt you. Yeah,
Yep.
so as she said, my name is Lisa Taunt. I'm from the Society, which is formerly SHC, which was formerly Society for Handicapped Citizens. We've been in the field, we're going to be coming up on our 70th birthday here in another couple years. I'm the Director of Residential Services, and I oversee both the ICF side of the world, but also recently waiver side of the world as well too. I've only been in the position a couple years, so the waiver side of the world is still new to me. I started in the field in 1987 and have been on the ICF side of the house. So this is definitely new water, new territory for me. My role in the ISP meeting right now, I don't attend those unless there's big problems and the folks underneath me, my managers and so forth, need that support. I've only had to do that a couple times because I have very competent, wonderful managers who have a really good handle on how to go in there and advocate for more services when it's needed, or to really push for changing the ISP when it needs to be changed because something has changed with the individual. One frustration with the ISP process, I'm looking forward to the single ISP process because some of the information is not consistent and certainly hard to get to. What do I hope to take away from this training? Just to build on the waiver knowledge. I don't have as much of that as I do certainly on the ICF side of the house, so I want to be better at my job as a director.
Awesome, thanks, Lisa. Dave Horseman.
Hi. I work for LAD out of Cincinnati. I've been with LAD for over 4 years now. I'm a residential coordinator. My role in ISP meeting is a lot, everything from updating information to an SSA to trying to manage outcomes and services to best serve the people that we work for. I don't have enough time to go through the frustrations in the ISP process. I'm very open to take anything away from this training.
Thank you, Dave. Amber Jessup. I'm not sure if I said that correctly.
Yep, you did.
Oh, awesome.
My name is Amber Jessup. I am Boundless. I'm the supported living administrator for our supported living services. I have been with Boundless for almost 6 years. I have been in the DD field for about 10. I started out as a special education teacher, left teaching, and then came to Boundless. So still within the kind of the same field. My role in an ISP really has gone back a little bit because I don't attend very many unless, as my staff like to say, I'm needed or my voice needs to be heard because they feel like their voice is not being heard. Which unfortunately I feel like is happening more and more anymore, that we're struggling with the SSAs of, yes, we do know them best, but we're not being heard. So they're trying to change things that make us feel very unsafe in providing those services because of what we do know about somebody, and we're having to fight tooth and nail. So that's where I really come in to try to help in those situations and help gather the information to produce that to the team. My frustrations, I guess, go along with what I just said. I get very frustrated that we do provide the services that we do when we get questioned on it consistently, especially during this time. You know, we have doctors' notes that say somebody shouldn't be left alone, yet an SSA is saying they're going to get OSOC and they're not going to, you know, where that confusion comes in is very, I think, frustrating for me as well as my staff. I hope to take away just some strategies to help me in those conversations, because like I said, even just this week, I have two big meetings of their supervisors, myself, our supervisors, because it's just become an issue all around and we're concerned with the safety of our individuals. So that's me.
Thank you, Amber. Scott?
Hi, my name is Scott Legault. I work for Independence of Portage County. My title here is Program Coordinator. I currently oversee 4 supportive living sites and 2 ICFs. I'm only been in the field for 5 years. I started as a DSP, actually, advanced to being an SPC, which I oversaw that particular supportive living site, managed it, and then applied for this position here. This is all very new to me. I've never been in a field like this before. This is what I'm going to take away from this is hopefully everything I need to know, and of course I won't. My frustration is this whole process for us. We initially we were divided. We had a supportive living side and we had an ICF side. What they've done is they've combined them together. So now we have leaders that are dealing with both sites, and we're defining our positions. We're in the process of learning and establish what future people holding this program coordinator's position will be doing. I've never written an ISP in my life till last year, was my first one. And that was kind of like a minefield, to be honest with you. I had 30 different examples of what an ISP was, which I believe this is supposed to streamline that so that we're all kind of all on the same page, which I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know much else other than I'm here to pick all of your brains and hopefully know in the end what my job is with regards to writing up an ISP and where we do, what information does need to be put in there in order to convey on to my staff, essentially. Because that's, honestly, Gary, I realize that we're supposed to be talking to Medicaid, but I get more of an impression that I'm communicating to my ICF staff, because they're the ones who are actually reading the documentation I'm bringing in. They're gathering their knowledge of the clients based off of what I'm providing them. So far, I've been really tailoring my ISPs towards my staff and communicating what they need to know in order to provide the services that our clients are entitled to, as you said earlier. But that's kind of where I'm at in all that.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Chad Kelly.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Chad. I work for Hattie Larlam, and my job is work training manager. I oversee all of our work training programs. We have 2 doggy daycares, and we also have 2 programs within some major industries, one being Go Joe, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, especially with the pandemic, making all the hand sanitizer. I've been in this field for going on 9 years. My role in the ISP meetings is to help folks understand movement from training, from work training, to community employment. Our goal 100% of the time for everybody that we serve is to go towards community integration and employment, gainful employment. So that becomes difficult at times. So the frustration is a few. I'm like Dave said, there's a lot of frustrations. But to name a couple is the unrealistic expectations of community employment. You know, what jobs are here? What jobs can we go for? What jobs are we qualified for? Those kind of things are tough. And also I don't know if you guys see it, but a lot of cut, copy, and paste from one ISP to another really eliminates the individualization of services that we try to hone in on. And I just want to be a more, my hope is in the training is to be a more prepared participant in the ISP meeting so that we can really see some progress forward.
There's an old saying, I'm going to butt in real quick. You're going to learn how to tie your damn shoes because everybody needs to know how to tie your shoes.
Right. That's where we are, man. That's exactly right.
Thanks, Chad. Alexandra?
Hello.
Hi.
Alexandra Wilson. I'm from Ladin, Cincinnati. I am the Smart Living Coordinator. So I oversee Community Supported Living Smart House. It's basically like a tech house. And I also oversee a brand new remote support team for LAD. So I collaborate a lot with like other LAD community sites in addition to mine. I've been in the DD field for about 4 years. Kind of started more on the IEP school age side of things, more on like the therapeutic side of things, moved over to day programming, done some community employment stuff. So for me, I'm really new to the HPC side of things. I've only been working for LAD for about 3 or 4 months as I'm starting brand new programs. My role in the ISP meeting, I'm in a lot of those right now with overseeing a growing program and especially helping to explain to SSAs and the system about a new service that we're providing. So very involved in the team there. One frustration. I hate going to ISP meetings where there's no engagement at all with the actual individual being served. The whole point of an ISP meeting is for them to be involved, and can't tell you how many times I'm the only person actually talking to them. I hate that. I hope to really learn more about the kind of funding side of things and how the services translate from a funding point of view. Since my background is more kind of like on the therapeutic outcomes side, I super get that world, but funding is new to me and I need a lot of help with that.
I'm going to butt in real quick. One of the things I really focus on is how do we not sit around and talk about somebody in front of them. It is demeaning. It is, I don't have enough bad words for it. What might be worse is when we say that, well, I don't even think George needs to be at the meeting. He can't add anything. That might be worse than talking in front of him. That's a toss-up. Glad you brought that up.
That was a very good point. And I can tell you this morning, I just watched the YouTube videos that they have put out on the new ISP process that they'll start training on, Nick. And if you think you're going to go to those training or those ISP meetings and not be speaking to the individual, you're not going to get it, because they have set that up completely around the individual. And hopefully, Alexander will see change in the field on all parts for that. All right,
Wanted to
Jackie
too,
Clayton.
we deal with that. We actually have FSAs that want to do the whole entire house in one sitting with us without anybody there. I mean, and we have to say, wait a minute, you want to do what? So I think that will be a really great addition with that new ISP, because again, that's some of the frustration that how is this person centered at all when you just want to quickly bam, 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 since you have the team together, do all three people that live in the same house.
Okay, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm from Lima. I work for Marymore Industries. I've been in the field around 10 years. I start in Cleveland area. I start as DSP. I'm a HAB coordinator at the Marymore. I'm going to meeting. It's been like 2 years. I advocate for my individuals, so I'm trying to help them just how to do their skills here, and we are gonna get prepared for them to find a job in the community. My frustration sometimes in the meeting is the caregivers or the doesn't want to cut the umbilical cord to let them to grow, or sometimes individuals are scared to work in the communities because they have bad experience in the past, and they think find a job in the community is going to be the same thing. And thank God that we have job coaches now so they can go. That's my only thing. I'm learning about waivers because I don't understand much of that. So I hope that that's what I'm going to learn here. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Ashante Upshaw. Oh, you're still muted.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you mute yours? Can you mute yours?
Okay, we're getting a little feedback. If everybody else can mute except for Ashante, am I saying that correctly?
Ashanti.
Ashanti. Okay, thank you.
So I work for Independence of Portage. I'm also a program coordinator. Not sure why there's an echo. I've been in the field for about 5 years. I also started as a DSP and to program coordinator. And my role in ISP is writing them, so it's still kind of new to me. The frustration that I have is just learning the whole process and making sure I'm doing it right. I'm more comfortable in the labor setting, so ISPs are still new. So I'm still just learning all of that process, and I just hope to take away everything you guys have to offer so that I can do my job effectively.
All right, thank you. How about Kimberly Williams?
Hi, I work with I work for DR Services Incorporated in Ashland County. I got hired in 2006 as a DSP. I did that up until 2017 when we were switching over to privatizing. It was scary and, drop in pay. So I quit and I went to the hospital at Ohio Health in Mansfield. I was there until February of 2018, so only a few months. And I got the call from DR Services, would I come back as the habilitation manager? So I did that, plus worked the hospital full time for 1.5 years. So I did both jobs full time. So it was a real struggle. But then in March of this year, I quit the hospital and I'm just doing this job now. I'm the habilitation manager, and in the ISP meetings, I go in and I kind of represent what I see with the individuals on the floor and my DSPs working with them. And I always try to go to my DSPs before the meetings, find out how things are going, things I haven't seen, has this changed or that. But a lot of times I don't get the feedback that I really need, that once I get into the ISP meeting, then I might be hit with some questions from the parent, guardian, or other provider or the SSA that I'm not sure of, because I'm not always on the floor anymore. So that's kind of frustrating for me. Coming from being a DSP, I really want to be able to help and represent the individual, especially those who can't tell us what they're wanting. But because I'm not on the floor with them so much anymore, I don't always know those answers. So that's frustrating for me. Also, I get frustrated with sometimes the parent or guardian, rather than let the meeting be about the individual and their needs and their desires and what they want in their future, the parent or guardian will take over and say, no, that's not what we want to do. And so I work very, very well with all my SSAs. They are wonderful. They're great. But sometimes that parent or guardian will take over and make the decision for the individual, even if they are verbal and can tell us. That parent or guardian say, nah, she really doesn't want to do that. I don't want her doing that. And then we follow that parent or guardian. So that's kind of frustrating for me, because that individual just got shot down. I want to take away from this. I want to learn more. Like I said, I haven't been the manager for very long at all. It's all new as far as that level goes. So I'm learning as I go, and there's still so much I need to learn, such as the waivers, how they work. I still get confused. So sometimes sitting in an ISP meeting, I think I know what I'm going in to talk about, and it turns into I really don't know. So that's frustrating for me as being a new manager, or fairly new.
Awesome, thank you. How about Tamika Henderson?
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I'm Tamika Henderson. I currently work for New Avenues to Independence. I am what they call a program developer, so it's similar to like a program manager. I have a cluster of 6 homes. They're community based. I've been in the field for about 22 years. Kind of been all over the place, waiver, vocational, ICF. I was an independent provider for a little while, so I've seen it from a lot of different perspectives. I think my role in an ISP meeting is to be an advocate, just to be an advocate and try to get the individuals the services they need, whatever that might be. And what else? What are some points of frustration for me? I think for me, frustration is just trying to get them the services and things that they need. It seems like just when I think I understand the process, I don't. Just when I think that I know who to contact for things, then I don't. I'm in the Cleveland area, by the way, Cuyahoga County. What do I want to take away from this training? Just more knowledge, just some more knowledge and understanding of the process, and so that I could just better help the people that, that I serve. Just as much knowledge and information as I can get, so I could just be a better advocate.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
How about Tiffany Leach?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Leach. I work with Koinonia Homes in the Cleveland area. I am a senior accountant, so a little bit different, I feel like, from everybody else here, that my role is mostly in accounting and finance. I have a little bit of and a little bit of insight into like client health funds, which is where I've seen most of the ISP documents so far, if I need to like look into client health funds. My role though is largely around billing, or is evolving, but starting with billing. So my goal in being here is to kind of understand the funding and gain some insight into that. I have never been involved in an ISP meeting, probably don't expect to be, but it's good to kind of get an overall picture.
Awesome, thank you.
So I'm gonna butt in here real quick. There are a couple of finance people involved in this training. I'm really happy to see that. We do a terrible job of getting program people and finance people together within our provider agencies. And I mean terrible job, because we really can help each other quite a bit in a lot of different ways. So I'm really glad to see that that you're attending this.
Okay, how about Sophia?
Okay, hi, my name is Sophia Buxton Murphy. I work for Independence of Portage County. I am a program coordinator. And like Scott said before, there's no real description for our job yet. I have 6 supported living sites and 2 group homes, 2 ICFs. I have been in this field for a little over a year. I've worked with Independence off and on for the past 5 years. But altogether, it's probably like a year and a half or so. I've been in this position since February. My role with the ISP is I develop the ISP, and then in the ISP meetings with the team, we make changes and just edit as needed, and how the team sees fit for the individual, as well as the individual included. They're always there in our meetings. One of my frustrations is I have a youth home, and those guardians often interrupt the process of us providing care because they feel defensive that they're not taking care of their youths. So they want to have a lot of control, but it's kind of hard to provide the services that the individual needs when we have, sorry, so many interruptions like that. I am hoping to take away from the training. I have a lot of things that I don't, a lot of terms that I don't understand as far as the supported living, the waiver side goes. And I have a lot of miscommunications with my SSAs because they think that I know everything already and I don't. So I think that's what I'm hoping to take away the most, is to understand more about where they're coming from when they're asking me for certain things.
I'm going to butt in again. There's now 2 folks that have talked about developing an ISP, and you're a QMRP and an ICF. Do you author the ISP, which is different than in waiver world, where the SSA puts pen to paper. You are going to be integral in this training. You just don't know it yet. Okay, because you understand what it takes to develop an ISP. You understand from a federal reg standpoint what is required for what is called active treatment in an ICF. Okay, so when we talk about all these terms, we got 900,000 buzzwords, and they're different in ICF than they are in waiver world. But they really all do mean the same thing. We just got more acronyms than you can put on a piece of paper. But I'm gonna remember you because you can really help in a discussion around how do you develop a good ISP? What are the components to it, and how do you go about that? Okay, because you actually do it.
Awesome, thank you. Carly Crump. Please correct me if I'm saying any names wrong.
No, you said it right. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm Carly Crum. I am from Venture Productions. We are a day program in Adams County in West Union, Ohio. I am so I'm the program manager. I've been there for about 6 years. I oversee all the HPC services, the day program services, sit in with the SSAs on decision making with the ISPs in the meetings. I help the staff understand the ISPs and make sure that they are implementing them with the individuals. I do find that it is very aggravating in the ISP meetings that a lot of things are copied and paste, and I see a lot of things sometimes that don't belong in the meetings as well. I also think that sometimes the frequencies aren't always right in the ISP, so I guess I'm just trying to figure out be a better voice for them in the ISP meetings with knowing all this information and how to make it flow a little bit better.
Awesome, thank you. Kurt Lofton.
Hi, let's see, Kurt Lofton. I work for Goodwill Columbus. I've been with them a little over 20 years. Been in the field since 1990. Started out as a direct service provider, took a manager position briefly for about a year, decided that wasn't for me, came to Goodwill, and just actually took a manager position about a year ago, October, with Goodwill. And I fortunately am still in close contact with a lot of the individuals we serve. But you know, it's a little bit different now. I can go out and I can cover some things and join groups and do the fun stuff, but I still have to do all the managerial deal now. So basically, I supervise a group of 4 to 5 staff with, and each staff has about 4 people in the current setup because of the COVID restrictions and things like that. But that's generally what we do all around. The last 3 years, we've had this program called the Community Experience, and we've just been totally community-based with the folks that are in that group. And now we're gradually trying to transition all our ADS programs to community-based programs. ISP meeting role is everybody on all the individuals on my caseload now. I'm trying to be an integral part of their ISPs, and it goes kind of along with the frustration. For so many years, I sat in ISP meetings, and we would go over person-centered planning with the individuals, and they'd have, a list of going to Disney World to just going to a movie with somebody, wide range of activities. The Disney World would be, a 5-year goal or something, which is fine. It may take 5 years to get everything together and money and all that kind of stuff. But just going to the movies, the only time they go to a movie is when their roommates had to go, or, at ADS, whatever. And so it was just never seeing what the individual wanted in their ISP, really. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is sit in on all the ISPs. And that's why I'm thankful this one ISP statewide is coming in. I think that's going to be great. I've been wanting that for years. What I hope to take away from the training is a lot of the terms that I've heard for 30 years. I'm still like, huh? And just like the level 1, the IO waiver, that's something I've already learned. I didn't realize when Gary was saying that earlier today. So just learning more on the management side, that type of thing. And hope to be transferring a lot of that to the DSPs I work with.
Awesome. Thank you, Kurt. Melissa Cotton.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick. Folks, if you're using your computer as a speaker, you either need to talk right at the computer or you need to widen the angle of your speaker, because if you move your head away, the microphones don't pick up right. So you go in and out, in and out.
Thanks, Gary. Melissa Cotton. Don't know if she stepped away. How about Maria Hamler?
It looks
Hello.
like Melissa, I'm sorry, it looks like Melissa Cotton put in a chat.
Oh. Oh, okay. Well, let me read hers real quick then.
Okay.
She says, hello, my name is Melissa Cotton. I work at Scioto Residential Services in Portsmouth, Ohio. Been employed here for 25 years this past October. First 5 years were in direct care, 20 years as healthcare benefits specialist, now transitioning into service and support coordinator position. I've never attended an ISP meeting. I hope to better understand the ISP process so that I can be a better advocate for the individuals. Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, Maria, I'm sorry. Now go.
Oh, that's okay. Hi, I'm Maria Hamler. I'm the Senior Program Manager at New Avenues to Independence Waiver Department. I've been in the field for more than 20 years. I worked a good 13, 14 years in ICF. I started as DSP and now I'm in waiver. My role is in the ISP. I do a variety of roles pertaining to the ISPs. I'm in meetings, I'm writing the ISPs, I'm communicating with the guardians, very, very involved with the SAs, and I appreciate the SAs who's very, very understanding of the difficult role we play in residential and the support that they give us. One of my frustrations now, I'm not for sure if everyone is familiar. In the past, especially in ICF, the ISPs were more individually oriented. It described exactly what support the individuals needed. What if it was teeth brushing, if it was doing buttons, if it was making sure their shoes on the correct feet, if it was hand over hand showing them how to serve themselves, hand over hand showering, showing them, teaching them the stop signs on the road, how to, properly cross the street. Right now, within the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years, the ISPs has changed so drastically to where they're so generalized that they're all the same. My frustration is that we're here to teach, assist, support, provide services to the individuals that if we're in the field, we actually love working in the field because we know it's not for the wages. But with the new ISPs, the county board has changed to the point where we have the new staff coming in who don't know, well, you have to assist him with brushing his teeth, and that may mean hand over hand. You have to teach him or give him continued prompts to rinse his mouth out after he brushes teeth. You have to teach him how to take his plate to the sink. scrape the food out, rinse the plate off, and put it in the dishwashers. We're providing individual support. And right now with the new staff that's coming in and the new ISPs, you know, we're not babysitters. We are here to support them. And I'm having difficulty getting the staff after reading the ISPs to implement these services, because the first thing staff is saying, well, it doesn't say that in their ISP. In the past, it was documented. And I understand, you know, the whole goal is to create the independence on the best level we can. And with the ISPs being the way they are now, our individuals are not getting the best support they can. I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And what I'm hoping to take away from this training is just to get a better understanding of what the county boards and what the state is looking for when it comes to these new ISPs and the services that we have to provide or need to provide to our individuals that we're serving.
You're muted, Gary. I'm
going to interrupt briefly. I love everything you just said, by the way. For those of you that have been involved in Imagine, my favorite saying is imagine this, imagine that, because it's not in the ISP. So it's left up to your imagination. They're content free unless we're going to talk about where you're going to get your hair done. And of course, that's important. I want to tell everybody right now, the single ISP process is not going to be the Holy Grail, because it still requires people to do things to go into that process. And if people don't do it, then it's not going to be the Holy Grail. We've been talking about the single ISP process the entire 36 years I've been in this field. And up until now, every time we approach the subject matter, it has gotten poo-pooed. I do believe it will happen this time. But at the same time, if people don't have adequate input into it, it will be no better than what we have today. So I 100% agree with you, by the way.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing. I'm in agreement with the gentleman who said that we're gearing the ISPs to teach the staff. He said something of that nature, and that's what it seems.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to talk a lot about what the ISP is supposed to be. By the way, guess what the single authorizing document for Medicaid services is? It's the plan. That's what authorizes the Medicaid service, not PAWS, not any of these other things that people tell you authorizes the service. It is the ISP or the IP. It is the plan. It is the authorizing document. If it's not in there, folks, guess what? You're not authorized to do it. I'm going to talk a lot about these concepts. And I'm going to tell you right now, when we get into some stuff later today, the reason why I want to see all your faces, because I can't tell you how many times people have said, well, Gary, you just don't understand. You have no idea what I go through every day. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. I know what you go through every day. That's why we do this training. That's why it's important, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Beth?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, my name is Beth Baumert, and I work for Manahan, formerly known as Josina Lot in Toledo. I have been there for 22 years. I am the director of our community programs, which includes our adult day program and our waiver home. I continue to be involved and attend ISPs along with the DSPs and the managers. One frustration I have about the ISP is that when you're in a meeting and you all agree upon something, you walk away and you get the ISP, and it is not at all what you talked about and agreed upon during the meeting. I hope to take away from today more knowledge to take back to my managers and DSPs, and also to hear others' experiences and learn from them. And I'm sorry that I don't have video on, but I'm working from home. It's a snow day up here. I live in Michigan. So if you want to see kids and dogs every 5 minutes, I can turn the video on.
Love kids and dogs.
Yeah.
By the way, the reason why we do this introduction is because everybody gets to hear what everybody else's frustrations are. You are not alone. Everybody's got them. That's another key point is, well, wait a minute. We went to an ISP meeting, we all agreed, and it came out, and Voodoo, oh, I'm sorry, that's what was behind door number 2. I was behind door number 1.
Okay, how about Stephen O'Neill?
Hi, I'm Steve O'Neill. I'm work with Echoing Hills in Athens, Ohio, as the program director over ICFs and waivers. I've been in the field for almost 10 years. I started in activities with Echoing Hills and became a Q about a year later, and then now I'm the program director. So I kind of missed doing the activity side of things because that's where I got to know the individuals very well. Most time one-on-one kind of situation. So my role with the ISPs, I work with my managers of the homes and the SSAs and the individuals to, come up with the best plan for the individual. I assist them all with the assessments that need to be done. The MRC, CPT, ASAP, whatever you want to call it. But I do work closely with the SSAs and my managers on all that aspects. The MRCs over the last year and a half is, I like it because it kind of helps me out on the budget side of things too. And I do work closely with our billing department at Echoing Hills up in Conshohocken, to try to get things corrected when it needs to be corrected. My biggest frustration with the ISP is, kind of what I've heard everybody else is, not getting the accurate information on what needs to be communicated to the staff per that individual. And then from the billing side of things is MRC is great and it's easy. I think it is. It's just trying to get things done sooner than the 59-day mark. But we typically get it done, whether it's first week of, when it's due or at the 59-day mark, we get things corrected. But and then I feel like I know a lot, but there's always room for improvement. So I hope to take away some additional information from this class as well.
Awesome, thank you. Melissa Levan?
Hi, my name's Melissa. I'm the Director of Nursing for CRSI in Urbana. We serve individuals in 25 counties. I've only been here for about 3 months now, so I'm very, very new to this field. I was previously a NICU nurse and then worked in the veterinary field before that. So I like animals and humans alike. I have not been involved in an ISP process yet, so I'm looking forward to learning everything that I can about it so that I can be helpful if I have to be.
All right, I'm gonna throw something in here. I'm really, 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 really glad we have a nurse. By the way, this never ceases to amaze me, but so what's the #1 criteria for eligibility for Medicaid? Anybody know?
Diagnosis.
Diagnosis. Who diagnoses? Who does diagnosis?
Physician.
Who signs the level of care? Doctors? They gotta have MD after their name, right? It's called medical necessity, folks. Not habilitation necessity, it's called medical necessity. We do a really good job of shoving our medical field to the side in our field, when that's another key component to service delivery. Just gonna throw that in there.
Awesome. How about Jeannie Robbins?
Hi, my name is Jeannie Robbins. I work for LAD in Cincinnati. I'm a coordinator over two licensed group homes. I've been in the field for about 20 years. My role in ISP meetings is advocating for the individuals that I serve, making sure that their voice is heard in the meeting and that it is person-centered around them. I think some of my biggest frustrations are when family tries to run the show and try to make all the decisions without involving the individual, over talking the individual. I make sure that the individual people that they want are involved in the meeting, as far as what staff they prefer to be there, what family members they want to be there. What I'm hoping to take away from this training is just more education, more knowledge, and learning from everybody else and their experiences.
Thank you. Carrie Waters.
Hello, group. This is Carrie Waters. I'm actually on the flip side here. I'm with the Columbiana County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And the reason I wanted to participate in this training with the provider folks is so that I can listen to all the questions, the concerns, and take that back to my office and hopefully do a better job with my SSAs and helping them do a better job, work as a team member, and to work with all of you. I've heard a lot of, I keep getting kicked off and then I come back in, so I'm sure I've missed some things, but what I'm hearing is that the SSAs don't know the individuals, which, you know, a lot of us don't, and that's very true. We rely on you as the direct service folks to, you guys are with the individual every single day. We trust what you have to say. We listen to what's being said, and very important team members. I can't express that enough. You know, my SSAs, we don't have the opportunity to be with that individual as much as we'd like to. As far as the individual service plan goes, you know, we try to be as person-centered and driven that we have the ability to be based on that individual's wants, their needs, their guardian, the staff members, you know, always taking into consideration important to, important for. But it's difficult for us as well. And we're not always the bad guys, but you know, there's a lot of miscommunication. I know when some of the SSAs overstep their boundaries and they need to get back in their lane, because we're also a team member, we facilitate, but you guys are the most important. You're the most important to the team because you know what that individual needs to have to support them to have greater independence. So I also get frustrated when I'm in a team meeting with an SSA that doesn't put that individual first, that doesn't include that individual in their team meeting. So I'm here today to hopefully have some training moments that I can take back to my group based on some of your frustrations, what you'd like to see us do a better job at here in Columbiana County. So I'm not taking offense to anything that's being said here. I'm taking it as a learning experience and trainable moments for sure for my staff. So thank you all for being honest and I guess just not knowing who I am, but definitely not a bad guy because we want to do a better job working with our local providers.
Barry, I am really excited that you're doing this. And I will say that, you know, I work with quite a few SSAs in Cuyahoga County with a couple of providers. And I will echo some of the words that Carrie said, where, I mean, I think you guys really are trying. I think you guys really do involve the providers and you have really good conversations, more so than a lot of other counties. You know, it's different in every county. I mean, I'm just going to come right out and say it. You know, there's just like providers, there are some that do it well and there are some that don't do it as well. So, I mean, this is not an anti-SSA a training. This is a training around how, sorry, someone's calling me. Sorry about that. This is a training on how everybody needs to be part of the team process and everybody brings their part to the team. And if everybody does that, the outcome is better services for the people that we are all serving. I mean, we are all part of the service delivery component. And everybody has their responsibilities. Everybody has their tasks that they need to do. And it needs to be a collaborative effort. If it's not a collaborative effort, it's no good. I'm going to use my analogies of team because I used to play team sports. But I think that, I mean, they're all exactly the same. You know, if you have, you know, the offense on the football field and you got 11 people out there and 3 of them don't do their job, guess what happens to the play? It doesn't end up very good, does it? So if you got 5 people in the room for an ISP meeting and you got 2 people that don't do your job, guess what you end up with? You know, the analogies are the same. It's not a finger pointing contest either. It's not, you know, you never see this in team sports where someone blames another person for why the play didn't work out well, because that is, it doesn't accomplish anything. In fact, it accomplishes negative things. So finger pointing is not the way to effectuate good change. The way to effectuate good change, folks, is if you expect a different result, you try to do something different. You don't expect the other person to be different. Because the only person in this world that you can control is yourself and what you bring to that process. Carrie, thank you very much for participating in this.
No, and you know, I've been looking forward to this, you know, provider relations, just working with the DSP, especially now in the pandemic. It's just, we all need to work together. We need to brainstorm, come up with, we just have to get through it. And I want to make sure that my team is doing a better job as far as provider relations and communication. So I am here, and if anyone would have questions for me, as long as I don't get kicked off, I can answer questions as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
Alyssa, Alyssia. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. Not there. I tried to highlight people as they came in. Is there a Lisa Humphrey? A Wanda? Does somebody is online that's FC2? If you're that person, can you unmute and introduce yourself? Okay. Is there anyone that is online that I've not called to introduce themselves? Take that as a no. Okay, so we've done introductions. So goals of the training. You know, we'd really love it if you would attend all 3 trainings because they do build upon each other. Participate. After hearing all your introductions, I don't think we're going to have a problem with that. I think that's the thing I love about social workers the most, is that they're not afraid to communicate. Share your ideas, your experiences. As I said before, no bad ideas or wrong answers. We're going to learn from each other. And we hope that you walk away with a toolbox to assist you in moving from an ISP team attender to an ISP team member if you don't already feel like one. Gary kind of went over this, so I'm just going to briefly go over this one. Again, what governs? You know, it's the federal regulations governed by CMS. The Ohio waiver document, you know, is approved by CMS. All state law in this area have to be approved by CMS. And those laws then, you know, are just kind of a regulatory scheme. They're not the details. The different agencies will then write their administrative rules, which is mostly what we're going to look at today. And these rules are the ones that are going to tell you what you can and cannot do. And the reason that you know, this is the reason that we're going to be looking at them. They govern what you do. You need to be able to interpret them. And, you know, if you don't know the rules and what governs, it's going to be hard for you to be an effective member in the ISP meeting. Maybe some of you mentioned that there are terms and things that maybe the SSA, who's been in the field for 25 years, understands and knows and just assumes that everybody else does. So hopefully you can learn a little bit from some of this. Do you have anything to add on that, Gary?
Yeah. When CMS, I didn't cover that. That's the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. That's the federal agency that oversees both Medicaid and Medicare in this country. When we talk about administrative rules that tell you what you can and cannot do, administrative rules specifically tell you what you can do. They don't specifically tell you what you can't do. So when you're reading administrative rules, you have to understand the context in which they're written in. If you tried to write an administrative rule that had all the can'ts in it, it would be 500 pages long, and as soon as it went to press, someone would go, "Oh darn, we forgot one." Okay, so that's not possible. There are some cannot do's in administrative rules. Those are specifically put there to elaborate on what you cannot do. But when you're reading an administrative rule, it really is about what you can do, which means you cannot do everything else by definition. I spent a lot of time in my career writing administrative rules. I still review them and make comment on them for opera. I've done that for many, many, many years. So, you know, we're gonna remind you throughout going through administrative rules, you know, that's the context in which certain words are used, and you have to use them that way. You can't let your brain make up ways. It's what a lot of people do when they read administrative rules. The second thing I'm going to tell you is the reason why we go through these rules, and it's going to seem like it's a little laborious at times, but I mean, I want to give you an analogy. If an electrician came to your house, I don't think you would want them in your electrical panel if they didn't know what how everything works in your electrical panel. I'm going to give you another analogy for the nurses, and the nurses would contest to this. If I'm laying in a hospital bed and someone comes in to do something for me, I certainly wouldn't want them to do anything for me if they haven't read my chart. And I certainly wouldn't want them to do anything for me if they don't have the education or been trained to do what they're about to do. We do an absolutely horrible job of taking all you folks and shoving you out there into to whatever job you have. And we don't tell you any of this stuff. It never ceases to amaze me. I mean, how many of you have read the homemaker personal care rule? I saw one hand go up, but I don't see all the people. There's a whole list of rules we're going to go through. And the reason I pick these rules out is because they're pertinent to you doing your job. We seem to think that the best method of communication is I'll whisper in your ear and then you'll go whisper in somebody else's ear, and they'll go whisper in somebody else's ear. And I believe we all were like in the second or third grade where you got in the big oval and chairs in the room and someone whispered in someone's ear and it went all the way around. And then you asked the last person to say what it was that they heard. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the first whisper. That's how we communicate a lot in our field. And I'm going to go back to what Carrie said. We misinterpret a lot. We miscommunicate a lot. We do a lot of things that don't help us out because we're not intentional enough about what we do. I'm also going to say that sometimes we're not respectful enough about what we do either. If you want somebody to take you seriously, you better be respectful to the person that you're talking to, because body language means oftentimes 9 times more than what's coming out of your mouth. Okay, how you say things, how you fluctuate your voice. We're going to talk about basic communication 101 skills because they're vitally important to whatever message you are trying to get across. They're vitally important to the team process. The other thing that we're going to talk a lot about is listening, because that's another thing as human beings we don't do a very good job of. We don't listen. We're all ready to talk, but we don't do a very good job of listening. These are called active communication skills. And in a team process, they're vital. Because at the end of the day, if we expect to have any input into it, then we have to be respectful of the process.
Sorry, Gary, can I ask a question really quick that you just brought up into my head?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about ISPs, and in your commentary just now, I really think you touched on ISTs or individual specific trainings, and I wanted to ask you a question about how ISTs are relative to rule. I know that an ISP has a specific rule to it, but what are the basic underpinnings to individual specific training relative to a DSP, and how that moves forward, how that relates to an ISP?
You're talking about training for the individuals? I'm not sure what your question is.
Sorry. Well, so I mean, before, I mean, if I have a DSP that comes in, they're required to be individually specifically trained before they're able to provide services, correct? And so that's relative to the ISP. And I was just asking what the rule is between that individual specific training and the ISP. I mean, if I tell somebody, hey, this is a person, here's my plan, read it over, that's not individual specific training. So I I mean, in reading through rule, I've never seen like a specific definition of what IST means relative to an ISP. If that makes sense.
I'm gonna try and answer your question, and then what I'm gonna want you to do is after our second day of training, I want you to rethink about that question. So I'm gonna go back to the basic principle that the ISP is the authorizing document for Medicaid services. And by the way, I don't make any of this stuff up. That's what the federal regs say. And I'm going to go back to the basic premise is that just like in an administrative rule, if it's not in the ISP, you're not authorized to do it. So what we do in our field a lot is we make it up as we go along. That's what we do. And we do it because we say, oh, well, that's the right thing to do. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And we unilaterally make decisions without vetting it through the team process, which means we end up with ISPs that are not indicative of the services that people need and don't give people the basic underlying information they need to develop modalities for how we provide services. We can't do any of those things without assessments. We can't do any of those things without all of that underlying data and information on an ongoing basis through the ISP process. So it's not just a document, it is how we communicate and how we make decisions and how we progress forward with people in a fluid manner.
All right.
And I know that probably doesn't answer all of your question right now, but give it some time as we go through the rules and then think about it within those contexts.
Okay, individual service plans. We've obviously been having a lot of discussion about this already. You know, a lot of you had comments on what you thought were good, you know, ISPs, and a lot of you already know what bad ISPs are, and how do you gauge a good one. As we said, there's 88 different ways right now that a ISP can be written. Gary and I spent last summer going from the top of Ohio to the bottom of Ohio, reviewing waiver documentation, and ISPs were part of that, obviously. And I was shocked on the difference. Some of them were well written and well detailed, and some they weren't worth the paper they were written on. They were, you know, 2 or 3 pages long and told us nothing. So we can all hope that the new ISP one plan is going to help us get to the next thing. But you know, the ISP is supposed to be the roadmap to tell you what services that you're supposed to be providing. It, and Gary already mentioned it, it is the most important document for your organization, because if you're providing the service, it needs to be in that ISP. And when you're going to ISP meetings, you know, Gary's going to talk a lot about this, about, you know, do you go prepared? You know, what do you bring with you? Do you bring anything with you? Do you have a roadmap of the services that need provided? Are you updating assessments, or you just bring last year's ISP and just, you know, say that looks good? So, you know, through learning the rules and listening to Gary talk about how to be an effective team member, you know, you need to be, you know, the ISP meeting starts way before the day of the meeting. It's what you're doing to get prepared for that meeting. What data do you need to gather? Are you going and talking to the individual, you know, to see what has changed, what desires that they have that might have changed? So all of this is part of the ISP process. You know, do you have an ISP checklist at your organization? You know, here are the steps you need to go through to get ready for an ISP meeting. Or does everybody, for, you know, house manager for every home, do it a little bit different way? If you have a plan, you're definitely going to have better results.
Yeah, and one of the hard things about not doing this in person is one of the things I do when I ask people what do they do to prepare to go to an ISP meeting, and I grab a bunch of pieces of paper and I go, oh shit, I'm a half an hour late. I saw some smiles. You know, it's like everything else in life. If we don't come prepared, guess what? You're not going to have a grandiose conversation and come out with a great ISP in a half an hour. It's not going to happen. So you got to do homework before you go. You've got to do what I call a pre-ISP meeting before you go. You should sit down with your direct service staff and get ideas from them. What's going on? What do we need to address? I mean, you need to gather information before you go so that you can have precise, adequate input so that the process works well. You know, I hate going to the meetings that have no agenda because they typically last a long time and not much gets accomplished because nobody knows what's going to happen. You know, and starting an ISP meeting by going, has everybody read the ISP for last year? Does anybody have any changes? Is not the way to have an ISP meeting. It's very ineffective. And so people get frustrated and people start pointing fingers. So, I mean, that's part of the stuff that we're going to talk about.
Gary, you brought up something recently that did bring to mind a question I don't know if you have the answer to, but does anybody know like a timeline on like an Ohio unified ISP platform? Everything's been like county by county, and I know that Ohio has been trying to like build a person-centric ISP platform for everybody and been trying, and then the pandemic happened and added a bunch of complications to it. But I mean, if we're going into a my plan meeting, the platform of the newer ISPs is slightly different than it has been in the past years or even before then. So I didn't know if you had any insight into if we're going to move forward with like a singular ISP platform for all of Ohio.
Yes.
Yeah,
Today's answer is yes, we are.
Yeah. So if you go to the DODD website and you put in the search Ohio ISP, they have a whole page and they have 2 YouTube videos that they've put out, or you can do it in the My Learning that kind of is giving you the landscape of what this is going to look like, how they got there, who worked on it, they've tested it. It is an online platform. Assessments will be part, integrated. So there's a lot of good features. What I saw today when I looked at it, it looks like the beginning of 2022. They intend everybody across the state to be live with it. So there'll be training, I believe, probably during the first quarter. And then I'm sure there'll be a phase in with what I think they intend everybody, but by the beginning of 2022 to be live with it.
Yeah, this administration at DODD does a pretty good job of communicating as they go along. If you're not signed up for Monday memos, you should be. And then you'll get an email once a week and it'll talk about all the things that they're working on and progress, and you'll get all sorts of communication that way. I would highly recommend that you do that. If you've never been on DODD's website, I highly recommend that you get on it and start surfing. We spend a lot of time in our private lives surfing on all sorts of crap. You could spend a little bit of time surfing on this. Just ways to get information.
And the Monday memos will give you that information about when the trainings are coming out and I just signed up for, it's like a chat where they're just going to talk about it, and that's not the official training, but they will continue to bring those out. And you're going to need to be the expert. So my suggestion is make sure that you're aware of when those trainings are and be on them. So when this is rolled out live, you're prepared. There's probably a lot of things that you're going to need to do before this gets rolled out and changes within your organization to get ready for this. So you want to be on top of it.
Okay, it's noon.
Yeah. It
Why
is
don't we
noon.
all go grab a bite to eat and be back at 12:30 promptly?
I'll leave that one up. I'll leave the Zoom on, so it'll just stay here. So if everybody just wants to mute and go get their lunch, and we will resume at 12:30. Thanks.
Melissa, before you walk away,
Yes.
what was that path that we needed to follow on the Department of Developmental Disabilities to access and find out more about the ISPs?
You know what? I will get that and I'll put it in the chat so you can just click on it.
All right, thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're welcome.
Gary, Melissa, just so you know, we just got our food, so I'm going to go off camera, but we're going to be listening to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. And before we get started, I'm going to share my screen. I did put the link to the Ohio Individual Service Plan. So when you get in here, this takes you to the welcome page. It has some icons over here. It gives you the timeline. So this is where I was
Already
getting.
started navigating through it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And here on the trainings, here's
Okay.
where the 2 YouTubes are. And then here are some resources that give you a little bit more of kind of what the content, what the essential elements are going to be. These are items that you could probably start looking at now to get an idea of, you know, what does my ISP say now and what is it gonna say? And so there might be, you know, some work that you can do ahead of time. And again, when you watch those YouTube channels, you're going to see it really is individual focused, the group. And in this website, it has all of the minutes of all the meetings that they've had. So you can kind of see the progression. You can see who was on the team. It was, you know, DODD, it was, you know, DSPs, county boards, you know, providers, everybody was at the table.
Sure.
So there was a lot of good information being shared amongst everybody there. So there's a lot.
When I first took over this position, they really didn't have a set ISP. And like I said, I was looking at other ISPs. Some of them were very convoluted. Some of them had high language in it. And I kept thinking, how is my staff even going to understand any of this? But I was told then that they wanted it to be first person focused. So at that point, I started trying to get into the head of the individual and writing it from their perspective. And these are my issues. This is how you handle me when I'm in this situation or experiencing this. And of course, whatever services we are providing at the same time, we're included in all of that. So I've been doing an individual focused ISP since I've started. Now, this is going to be a more formal consolidated plan. The entire state's going to be on it, which I really am kind of looking forward to, because I think it's really good that if I can access the database, any of my clients, they move out of my area and they're still staying in the state of Ohio, can access that ISP anywhere they go.
Right.
I think that's great.
Yeah. And it focuses on, and you'll actually see it in there, what's important to and what's important for, right? The individual. And so everything gets
Already
spelled out.
included that. That's
Yeah.
already included in my ISPs. What's important for me, what's important to me. Also, behaviors like, if I do this, it really means this. This is what you should do.
Yep.
We've included all of that in our current ISPs, and I have to say I have tailored it more to where, and I think most of the PCs here, to where my staff, any staff can walk in and read it and understand what they're reading, which really I found to be the biggest problem initially. Was some of our ISPs were they were like tombs, and the information was so medically driven that most of my staff had no idea what they were talking about. So I really kind of eliminated all that, but that's all part of my assessment process. So in gathering the data, I go, you know, the last doctor's appointment, the last dentist appointment, the last eye appointment, and I have a fundamental assessment that right now I'm letting my support, the staff itself fill it out, because they deal with that client daily.
Right.
And they know what they're experiencing. So, and then I gather all that up and again, read the previous ISP and then try to develop something off that. I'm hoping that what we're doing here is going to help me to streamline my thoughts in developing ongoing ISPs.
Yep. It sounds like you're.
All right, let's rock and roll. We got a lot to cover.
All right. Let me share my screen.
Hi, Scott, Melissa, I'm here. I'm just finishing up my lunch, so.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start with the Service and Support Administration, the Ohio Revised Code. And then we're going to go into the Ohio administrative rule on this. And so I'm going to open up that document so you can see. And as I had said before, these documents kind of are the abbreviated, and you will see the next administrative rule that we look at is very detailed. Can everyone see that rule? Is that up there, Gary? Is the rule up there, Gary?
It is.
Okay. Okay, so
Go back and start with the definition of words.
okay. Definition of words. So Gary will tell you, I've heard him say it once, I've heard him say it a million times, words matter, how they're said and in the context. In this particular rule and administrative rules, the words may and shall mean something very specific. May equals you may or you may not. Shall means you must. So when you're reading the rules, you really must look at those rules. If it says shall, it's not an option. If it says may, you may or you may not. You want to add anything to that, Gary?
Yeah. But I mean, again, I'm just going to emphasize that these words are not used like a storybook. So you can't make up in your mind what they mean. Legally, this is what they mean. So when the word recommend is used, it doesn't mean authorize. It means recommend. And the reason why the rule says recommend is because specifically in the federal regs, it says that the only entity that can authorize, increase, or decrease services is the single Medicaid state agency. So everything that is done is a recommendation. I'm going to talk a little bit later about, you know, when we get to that part in that rule, what you do if you don't agree with a recommendation. The reason why we start with this state statute is because this is the underlying process for the team meeting on the waiver. So it's important for you to know, if I'll go back to my sports analogies, it's important for you to know what the quarterback is supposed to do and what the quarterback is not supposed to do. The SSA is the coordinator of all of these processes. So it's important for you to understand, you know, what they are charged to do and what your input into that process should be. So this is the state law. This is not an administrative rule. You want to go through it, Missy?
Yeah. So this is going to tell you the board may provide service and support administration by directly employing service and support administrators or by contracting out. And you've probably seen in some counties that they do that. And the service and support administrator shall only provide the duties listed here in D. So these are the only duties that they shall do. Establish an individual's eligibility for services of the county board. Not do they qualify for services in general, it's do they qualify, you know, for the waiver under in that county? Do they meet the qualifications? They're gathering the information and doing the legwork on the assessments. They're not making the determinations. Assess individuals for needs. They're doing the ODDPs, the acuity, whatever assessments need to be done. Develop individual service plans with the active participation of the individual being served. and selected and other person selected by the individual. When applicable, the provider selected by the individual and recommend the plan for approval by the Department of Developmental Disabilities when services included in the plans are funded through Medicaid. So that line says a lot. First of all, it says, you know, who are the team members? If the individual wants you there, you're there, you're allowed to be there. They are recommending the plan for approval. They do not approve the plan. That is done by DODD when it's funded through Medicaid. They are establishing budgets for services based on the individual's assessed needs and preferred ways of meeting those needs. Assisting individuals in making selections among providers they have chosen. Ensure that services are effectively coordinated and provided by appropriate providers. They're in charge of monitoring and the implementation of the ISP, and they are in to watch for trends of unusual incidents and MUIs into the and make sure that any amendments in the ISPs are implemented when any of these issues are noted. So that is the Ohio Revised Code. And the next one, we're going to look at the administrative rule that kind of digs in deeper into each one of those. You want to say anything else about this, Gary, before I go to the next?
So I'm going to elaborate a little bit.
Yeah.
When you go back to the very beginning, it says the service and support administrator shall perform only. The reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to teach your brain how to read a law. When it says perform only, that's what it means. It means nothing else. When they are charged with doing things that are that the law authorizes them to do. That's why you see down here under B, we put the word only, because as a service and support administrator, these are the only things that the law charges them to do. You're going to see this over and over and over and over again. Develop individual service plans with the active participation. It doesn't say passive participation. It doesn't say the participation only if you want Johnny in the room and you think that Johnny might help. It says with the active participation of the individual to be served. And when it says when applicable, I'm going to tell, I tell providers this across the board, you can decide to do whatever you want to do. But if the individual does not want you to be part of their team process, I'm not sure I would want to be their provider. Now you can make up your own mind, but I would not want to be a party to ensuring the health and welfare of an individual based upon a plan of which I had absolutely no input into. And we're going to go through all those components in the SSA rule. But when you sign an ISP, you are signing it saying that you believe that this plan ensures, and if you don't know what the word ensure means, go look it up in Webster's dictionary. And by the way, they don't pick this word just because they think it sounds good. You believe that that service plan ensures their not only their health, but their welfare. Welfare is not safety, folks. Safety is a component of welfare. Welfare is a much broader definition. By the way, these are all in 42 CFR, the Federal Register. These are required words. You know, the state of Ohio nor any other state are allowed not to use them.
I have a question really quick, if that's okay.
Yes.
So in the concept of service and support administrator shall perform only these duties. that doesn't include anything relative to funding and pause. However, I mean, in any conversation I have with the funding department, with the county, I'm including an SSA in that. And so does that mean that they're negligible in that regard, or how does that relate?
Let's get through the rule. They are a part of the process because they are establishing budgets for services. We're going to talk about how those get established. That is part of the planning process. Let's get through the administrative rule, which will elaborate greatly from the state law.
Okay. All right.
You
So
got to make it bigger.
bigger. Okay. I can't see what you guys see, so it's hard. How's that?
That's probably, is that good for everybody? Okay.
All right. I want to just go over. So these are the Ohio Administrative Code. They all have the same kind of setup. So I want to go over that first with you, just so if you've never read one before. They all start off with A and B. A is your purpose, B is your definitions. And if you keep going down, you will finally get to C, and then C on will kind of give you the meat of what the rule is about. We'll go over some of these definitions. A lot of the definitions point you to another administrative rule or code to look at. It doesn't repeat themselves. So if you start reading a rule and you say, I don't know what alternative services mean, well, you're not going to find out here. You're going to need to go look this one up in order to find that. And we'll show you where all these rules live, so you can look them up when you want to. But this is really the rule that expands on the one page that we just looked at. So this defines the responsibilities of a county board of developmental disabilities for the service and support administration, establishes the process for individuals who receive service and support administration to have an identified SSA who is a primary point of contact. So this one really is going to give you all the details, and Dave probably answer some of your questions. It spells out in your definitions what an assessment is. Means, the individualized process of gathering comprehensive information. So, when are your assessments done? We're going to go into the ODDP in detail. Gary's going to ask you, do you have a copy of the ODDP? Do you know what it says? Do you know that it is the document that determines your funding range? If you don't know what it says, how do you know if you're getting the right funding level for the individual? So the assessment is important. Budget for services, again, this is driven off the ODDP, and we'll show you how that works. And remember, when you're looking at this, you're worried about the health and welfare of the individual, and it's not tied to, here's your funding range and I got to fit that in to that. That's not the way it's supposed to work.
So here again in definitions, it says an assessment of the individual's process of gathering comprehensive information. It doesn't mean, and as Carrie said, they're highly dependent upon people who know the individual the best. So people who are involved in the team process need to bring the information and make the information known to the team. The thing that frustrates me probably the most when I go to an ISP meeting is there's not a whole lot of information sharing in a lot of counties prior to the meeting. And so that's what I mean by having an agenda, by having information that is shared so that when you come to an ISP meeting, you can actively participate because you have already had the opportunity to digest all that before you get there. Now, I will say that, carries on. Cuyahoga does a pretty good job of doing comprehensive assessments and sharing that information prior to meetings. And it makes meetings a whole lot easier to go through too because of that. That's, every time each one of you make a comment, by the way, you're making a comment within the context of the counties that you work in and the context of the SSAs that you work in. It is not like it's that way everywhere in the state of Ohio, because it's not like that everywhere in the state of Ohio. Okay. So this is pointing out that the SSA's responsibility as the primary point of coordination is to make sure that they get all this stuff so that they can have an effective ISP meeting, so that they can effectively coordinate services. Excuse me.
All right. And again, still under the definitions, person-centered, ongoing process. So, of making sure that the individual identify the individual's unique strengths, interests, abilities, preference, resources, desired outcomes. Ongoing process is probably the key there. And who knows the individual? We already decided that was us, right? Or that's you. You're the people that provide the services. So it's your job to make sure that those desires and outcomes are brought to the table. And ongoing means if something changes during the ISP span, that's your responsibility to bring that to the SSA and if to determine if changes need to be made.
Really quick, one question that I've had relative to that specific rule is relative to outcomes and assessments in an ISP.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
Let's go through the rule.
Gary already pointed this out, but primary point of coordination, means the identified service and support administrator who is responsible to an individual for the effective development of implementation and coordination. So the thing that jumps out at me, responsible to the individual. Who is our boss? The individual is all of our bosses. It's the SSA's boss, it's your boss. It's the whole reason everybody is around the table talking about an ISP. So I think it kind of helps us if we keep that in mind. And it literally defines what the team is here. The team is persons chosen by the individual. And again, Gary's already mentioned, if your individual is choosing for you not to be at the table, then it might be a decision of whether it's an individual you should be serving. If you can serve them effectively, not being at the table.
I don't want to blush over guardian in here.
Yeah.
So the team includes the individual, go back up.
Oh, sorry.
The team includes the individual's guardian or adult, either one, who the individual has identified as applicable, the service and support administrator, direct support professionals, providers. People ask me all the time, so what's the difference between a direct support professional and a provider? You would have to actually look at legally what the definition of a provider is to answer that. The provider is the certified provider of the service. So if you're an agency, then it's anybody that the agency deems necessary in that meeting. Licensed or certified professionals, those are the people we poo-poo. I'm going to be very direct when I say these things because we think we know everything. We think the medical people and the psychologists and all of them don't know anything. I hear it over and over and over and over and over again throughout my career. We need their input in many, many different areas, folks. And any other persons chosen by the individual to help the individual consider possibilities and make decisions. So that person is able to frankly pick just about anybody they want. is what that means. There's a lot of conversation about what a guardian can and can't do. The bottom line is if a person has a guardian, the first thing you have to know is that they are guardian of what? And by the way, that's very important because they could be just guardian of estate, for example. Or they could be guardian of person, or they could be guardian only as it relates to medical needs. So it can be very, very, very specific. So I'll come right out and tell you, APSI is not guardian of estate for anybody in the state of Ohio. They refuse to be, which means they cannot make financial decisions on behalf of the individual because they are not guardian of estate. They are only guardian of person or very targeted areas such as medical, et cetera. So anytime someone has a guardian, it is important for the team to know what their guardianship level is when it comes to making decisions. The bottom line is if you're a guardian of person, you guys may not like what they have to say, but they are the guardian. It's no different than if I had a 5-year-old child. My 5-year-old child may not like what I have to say, but I'm still the guardian. Okay? There are appropriate avenues to contest guardianship if people think that they're really not acting in the best interest of somebody. If you really think that's the case, then take the appropriate legal, go to the probate judge. That's who appoints guardianship, by the way. But yes, they do get to make decisions. And yes, they are guardians until they're otherwise not a guardian.
And so this next section is the decision making responsibility and kind of spells out kind of what Gary was saying. You know, individuals who have been adjudicated incompetent have the right to participate in their decisions you know, in their lives. Individual for whom a guardian has not been appointed can have support and guidance from someone else, just as the description of team says. If the guardian has not been approved, authorize an adult to make decisions described in C2 here. If a guardian has been appointed for the individual, the guardian shall make the decisions in C2 on behalf of the individual within the scope of the a guardian's authority. Again, that's where Gary was saying you need to know what type of guardianship that they have. But all the way in here, the interest of the individual is utmost. And at no point in the decision-making process is the individual not to be included in that process.
The bottom line is the rule says they shall consider. Doesn't mean they have to do it.
All right, so this next section is a provision for the SSA. The county board shall provide a service and support administration to, and I want to point out this C here, is an individual residing in an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disability who request for a person on their behalf, request this rule to move to a community setting. And I really want to point this out because it doesn't, I don't believe, spell it out. It also works the other way. If somebody is in a waiver setting, an individual wants to move to an ICF setting, it is the SSA's responsibility to assist them in going there.
By the way, I want to go back and reiterate that the ICF program is an entitlement program. So even a person who's on a waiver can decide tomorrow, you know what, this isn't working out for me. I want to go move into an ICF. They have the unilateral right to do that. They don't need anybody's permission. They have the unilateral right to give up their waiver and move into an ICF because it's an entitlement program. If they are eligible for it, they are entitled to it. They already have a level of care because they couldn't be on the waiver if they didn't have a level of care. Here's the best kept secret. So in an entitlement program, there's no limits on the number of people that can get services. So what happens if every single ICF bed in the state of Ohio is filled and another person wants to move into an ICF? The legal answer is the state has 90 days to remedy that because it's an entitlement program. They can't arbitrarily limit the number of people who can receive something through an entitlement. By the way, states don't like entitlements, but it is an entitlement program.
How is that rule relative to guardianship though? So if an individual were to want to move from community supported living into an ICF and their guardian had a different opinion, where would that land relative to the SSA?
Well, unless someone can prove that the guardian is not acting in the best interest of the individual, the guardian wins.
Yeah, that sense.
All right, we're going to go to section F, primary point of coordination. And I think you'll find that the meat of this rule is in this section. It's a very long section to kind of remember what F is about. This is the SSA's primary point of coordination, what they're responsible. An individual shall be given the opportunity to request a different SSA from the county board. I like this one. I'm sure no one has worked for a provider that an individual didn't come and say, you know what, I want to go to a different provider. You know, they have that option. They also have this rule that says if for whatever reason they're, you know, not feeling like they're getting the best point of coordination from an SSA, they can request a different one. With the active participation of the individual and members of the team, the SSA shall perform the following duties. And here, this one also is a very long section.
So you guys may wonder why it keeps saying with the active participation of the individual. It keeps throwing the word individual in there over and over and over and over again throughout this rule. I think it's like 11 times last time, if my memory serves me correctly. It's because we're supposed to be doing all of this in a person-centered way. You can't do something in a person-centered way if the person's non-existent.
Yep. So the first one is initially and at least every 12 months, coordinate an assessment of the individual. The assessment shall take into consideration desired outcomes, health and welfare. I think that's another one that's probably repeated in here. And as Gary said, welfare is just not safety, it is the greater well-being. So understanding what that word means will help you. The assessment is also looking at risk, path to community employment, what's working, what's not working. So again, this says at least every 12 months. This assessment shall identify supports that promote the individual's rights, self-determination, physical well-being, emotional well-being, material well-being, personal development, interpersonal relationships, and social inclusion. So all of those things need to be in your mind when you're looking at these ISPs and writing them. Using person-centered planning, develop, review, revise individual plans to ensure the individual plan reflects the results of the assessments and includes supports that ensure health and welfare. That's number one on the list. Ensure the health and welfare is number one.
I'm gonna slow you down.
Go ahead.
Missy's going 900. She goes 900 miles an hour. I go about 2. Okay, so we're going to go back to the previous section.
Okay.
So this is what I call the body of work. We're doing all of these things. Why? Because it's a body of work. So we are looking at all these things together so that we can make appropriate decisions about health and welfare. So, you know, this comes up all the time. Well, it's somebody's right to do this and it's somebody's right to do that. I'm pretty sure that if I get on social media today, there's absolutely nothing in this world that somebody doesn't have the right to do or somebody has an argument for it. Because we all have our rights, right? What I will tell you is that if we can't ensure the health and welfare of the individual through the plan that we're developing, they cannot be on this waiver, period. If an individual does not submit themselves to a plan that ensures their health and welfare, the federal government says can't be on this waiver. So you can't try to provide services that ensure the health and welfare of somebody when they actively will not participate and agree to what it is that they need to ensure their health and welfare. So I'll give you an example. I'm a street hip hop person. I like being in the streets. I like hanging out with the gang members. I like to do drugs. I like to bring all my friends back to my home. By the way, I share my home with another person with a disability. My friends are the drug dealers. And I get to do this because it's my right. What's the answer to that?
Big fat no.
No, it's not your right. And I can give you the whole list of reasons why it's not your right. Not and be on this waiver. So the federal government, the state, and the money the county boards put into this program, we're not spending $100,000 a year on a person so that they can do whatever they want, regardless of how they might end up because of that. You can't assist a person in breaking the law. That's number one. You can't do that. You can't assist a person in doing things that will adversely affect their health and welfare. Now, people choose to do things that are, I mean, and another thing I hear all the time is, well, you and I get to make those decisions. Well, that is correct. We do, because we have the cognitive ability to know the difference between the two. The reason why we're providing services to these folks is because their cognitive ability is not the same as ours, or they wouldn't be eligible for the program. So don't blur the lines of what's right and what's wrong, what are my rights, with health and welfare, because health and welfare is adequately spelled out in the federal regulations. We must ensure them. I mean, that's an ominous word, ensure. Ensure means, gee, well, if something goes wrong, then whose fault is it? Right? We have to believe that the plan ensures their health and welfare.
Well, I mean, I see that rights is at the top, which I agree with, and self-determination is second. But what I'm taking from what you're saying is, and I agree with, is that self-determination and rights are actually kind of conflated between the two, and an individual's choice between what they want to do and their rights are a single thing. And then I mean, our job, and especially in an ISP, is determining our ability to actuate somebody's physical well-being relative to their self-determination and their rights.
Yeah, and that's why I call this the body of work, because all of them together create that. And one doesn't trump the other.
Okay. So again, when we're looking at what this person-centered planning needs to look like, ensure the health and welfare, assist the individual to engage in meaningful, productive activities, support community connections, assist individuals to improve self-advocacy skills, ensure achievement of outcomes that are important to the individual and outcomes that are important for the individual, address and minimize risk.
And so don't blush over little e.
Little e.
Little e, right there.
Little e, ensure the achievement of outcomes that are important to the individual and outcomes that are important for the individual, and address the balance of and conflicts between what is important to the individual and what is important for the individual. So that 2 and that 4 keeps coming out, and I believe the new ISP is literally written this way. So.
And that's where the hard work is.
Yeah. Yeah. What's important to someone might not be what's, good for them.
Important for them. That's right.
Important for them, right. The next page here reflects services and supports.
With the little e though, like I do have a question with that.
Yeah.
Like how do we address that in an ISP conversation? I mean, say an individual has an outcome or an assessment that they've had for a long time. It's something that may be generally important to them in some conceptual way, but it's not important for them. And
well, let's take, I'm a street hip hop person and I like hanging out with the drug dealers and the gang members. Well, that's important to me. I really like doing that, man. It's not important for me, it's important to me, right?
Well, I mean, I would
so what I would recommend you do is you say, okay, so why is that important to you? That's the conversation that you have, because I mean, this is psychology 101, folks. There's a reason why people fill their lives, or I should say fill voids in their lives with bad things. There's a reason for it. If you don't understand what the reason is, there's nothing you can do about it. People don't choose to do things that are unhealthy for them because it's just a good idea. They do it because there's a void in their life they're trying to fill. There's a history to it. There's a reason why that is attractive. What do you replace it with that's better? And how do you get the person on board with that? That's all that paragraph is trying to say, is there will be conflicts between the two. That's the real work for a lot of people that we provide services to.
And one of the last ones here is reflects service and supports that are consistent with efficiency, economy, and quality of care. So what exactly does efficiency, economy, and quality of care? It means it's fiscal and thoughtful manner. They can't have everything they want. I would love to sit on a beach every single day. I don't have the means to do that. So it definitely would, I feel like it would be good for me, but fiscally it's not there. So, somebody says.
This is one of the 7 tenets of Medicaid. This is in the federal regs, word for word verbatim. And so this sentence gets thrown around a lot, sometimes inaccurately. It's like reading anything. You just want to take one word out of it, or people will say, well, that's not efficient, or that's not economical, or that's not going to produce quality of care. There's a reason why it's all in one sentence. Because the services and supports need to be consistent with all 3.
Yeah. Also, when we're talking about this, it needs to be updated throughout the year. And we kind of already have discussed the fact that the SSAs don't have the opportunity to spend time with the individuals. And so who's going to know when it needs to be updated through the year? That's going to be you. And so you have to have a communication plan where you have open line of communication with the SSA. And so changes are made in a timely manner. Establish and recommend for and obtain approval for the budget for services based on the individual's assessed needs and preferred ways of meeting those needs.
By the way, that word is recommendation. It is not authorization. You will see the word recommendation over and over and over and over and over again. You will not see the word authorization.
Through objective facilitation, assist the individual in choosing providers through objective facilitation. So does anybody know what objective facilitation means?
Partial.
Impartial, right? So it's not their job to say, here's a list of 5 providers. These are the ones I think are good for you. Or these are the ones I recommend. They need to be objective when they're facilitating this process. They're assisting the individuals, not making the decisions for them.
You also find in the free choice of provider rule, individuals are allowed to self-direct. So here's another one-on-one Medicaid lesson. So if I have a Medicaid card and I want to go to the hospital because I feel like crap, and I live in the state of Ohio, which hospital do I have to go to? I go to any hospital I want, because every hospital in the state of Ohio accepts Medicaid, right? If I'm in need of psychological services and I have a Medicaid card, can I see any psychologist in the state of Ohio that wants that accepts Medicaid as payment? The answer is yes. I can also self-direct in waiver services. I can say, I want this provider, period, end of story. I don't want anybody to help me. I want this provider. You are allowed to self-direct.
What if an individual asked?
Ask what?
Do you recommend anybody? Or if there's, like, say there's a service.
Yeah,
like
I
work
might
training.
even let Carrie chime in on this, because you on there, Carrie?
I see her on the screen, but she may have walked away.
Okay.
Oh, no,
I'm here.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just on the phone with one of the SSAs, so I missed your question.
So the question is, what happens if an individual, I was saying that, in the portion of the SSA rule where it says, through objective facilitation, assist the individual in choosing providers. And I was making the point that they can ask for assistance in choosing a provider, or they could actually say, you know what, I really want this provider. I've done my own research and that's who I want, which they can do. So the question was, well, what happens if the individual asks for recommendation of provider, which is a totally different, like asking, well, who do you think would be good?
I'm trying to, hold on one second. I'm having a hard time hearing you guys. So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about free choice of provider and the individual choosing an independent or a provider agency of their choice?
Yes. And what we explained to them was an individual can actually pick a provider with nobody's help. They're allowed to do that because this is a self-directed waiver. Or they could say, hey, I want to interview a bunch of people because I really don't know who I want. Or the individual may say, well, who would you recommend?
Right,
So-
and that, as an SSA, that's a position that we don't like to be in. We have a lot of families, especially that reach out and, well, they talk to each other and they also want to know like who's better at doing what service. In Columbiana County, we do have providers that work better with behaviors. We have some that are better with individuals that have a lot of medical needs. I try to instruct not the payees, that's what I was on the phone call about. I try to instruct the SSAs to remain neutral. And, you know, if it's the individual, you know, we're still going to interview that provider. We're going to try to set up other interviews for them, but it just kind of puts the SSA in a position to where, you know, as far as free choice and provider goes, you know, we try to be neutral, but you do have those instances to where you're asked. And, you know, we have given our opinions. We're a small county, so it's just not something that we like to do, because as a neutral party, you're supposed to reach out and to all willing and able providers for that individual. So that, in a nutshell, we just try to stay out of the middle of that. But, you know, if we are asked, we try to give a very neutral opinion, unless it's, you know, related to their ability to provide for health and safety needs. Like I said, there's some in our county that provide better medical, some better behavioral. And we know that certain agencies aren't even going to touch an individual that requires 2-to-1 staffing, or, you know, those type of things. So I guess that was my political answer for us trying to stay out of the middle of it. But we do get asked quite a bit for opinions. But our job is to facilitate and participate in the interview with the individuals if that's what they want us to do.
And what's really helpful to SSA departments is for providers to kind of put together a synopsis of things that, you know, they may focus and be, you know, think that they're really good at, and some other things where they would say, gee, you know, maybe it should be somebody else because we don't really focus in that area. So for example, I use this a lot because, you know, it really is a narrow niche of providers that work in this area. If you are servicing people who are truly sex offenders, for example. By the way, I'm a CPA. Doesn't mean I can do taxes. I don't do my own tax return. I would never tell anybody I do taxes because that's not what I specialize in. So I have no business holding myself out to, well, yeah, I can do taxes because I'm a CPA. Well, you're a Medicaid provider and you may be certified to provide homemaker personal care, but it doesn't mean that you have the expertise to provide services to absolutely everyone who's on the waiver because of certain circumstances. So, you know, my short answer to this is providers should make it known to the county boards that they work in. Hey, these are things that we really try to specialize in. These are things we really focus on. And oh, by the way, these are things that we don't. And there's probably somebody else better if this is the situation.
I will say that, yeah, here in like Summit County, I think the providers do a real good job referring to other providers. If there's something that we can't meet their need, you know, we say, look, you might want to go over to like Goodwill. They have a work training program that better suits what you're looking for instance. So
right.
I was just curious, and the SSAs do a really good job being neutral here as far as the ISP meetings that I've been involved in saying, hey, we can't, you know, and then even when I make a recommendation, I say, you have the right to choose anybody you want. Here's who does it. And here's who I think does it well, even if it isn't us.
Right.
All right, so we're back here still talking about the SSA's responsibility with the ISP, verifying signatures and the date prior to the implementation of each individual's plan, indicate the provider frequency funding source for each service, and specifies which provider will deliver the services. Somewhere later in the rule, we will read that, you're supposed to have that signed ISP in your hand within 15 days. Because it is the authorizing document that authorizes you to provide services. If it's over 30 days, if that ISP is not signed and you were to get audited for that time period, you didn't have a signed plan for you to provide services. So you may be asked by Medicaid or whoever's auditing you to give that money back. So always to remember.
By the way, folks, this is no joke.
Yeah.
I've been involved in audits with providers where the state is asking them to repay money for dates of services that they provided services when they did not have a signed ISP in hand. It is part of their audit protocol when they come out and do claim audits.
Since COVID started, and we've had virtual meetings, so everybody isn't always able to sign it. Like our SSAs here in Portage County have been out of the office since March, pretty much. Would it be acceptable to put like a verbal signature, like they consented for us to write their names down on the ISP?
That would certainly be better than nothing, I would say. Number two, there's a nice little things called DocuSign and all sorts of other things out there that you can implement for signing things.
I love DocuSign. I haven't used it. I don't know how to set it up. I need to figure that out.
But the reason why I bring this up is because that's part of the audit protocol. By the way, I'll also tell you who can audit you. So you ready for the list? DODD, the Department of Medicaid, the State Auditor's Office, because guess who issues the warrants? The State Auditor's Office, CMS, the Department of Justice. I don't know about you, but now I'm getting scared. And the OIG's office. Now, if the Department of Justice comes in, do they care whether or not you're doing the right thing or not? I say these things because I can't tell you how many times I've heard from y'all, well, we virtually never get an ISP on time. It's normal for us to get one 2 weeks late or 3 weeks late or 4 weeks late or 5 weeks late. That's not okay, folks. It's not, because I will tell you who's on the financial hook. It is you. Now, I will tell you what I do when I get involved in these audits. I turn around and I go back to the person who is supposed to be responsible for that plan to be in place. And I say, well, maybe you just want to pay us then. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to say that there are consequences to these things not occurring that are beyond what people look at on the surface. And one of them is a financial audit.
Yeah, good point. Always to remember, it is the one document. It is the most important document that your provider, as a provider, you're going to have, because without it, you're providing services for free.
And it goes back to, if it's not in an ISP, then you haven't been authorized. If you have not been authorized, you are not a Medicaid provider. Not for that person.
So here is in the rule where it does spell out that they need to give that to you within 15 days. And it also, this is where the first place where it talks about a member of the team may disagree with any provision of the ISP at any time. All dissenting opinions shall be specifically noted in writing and attached to the ISP plan. So when we go back and look at, we need to ensure as a provider that we're meeting the health and the welfare needs of every individual that we're serving. If you don't feel that the ISP plan is meeting that, you know, you don't just take the plan as given to you and go with it. You need to write this dissenting opinion, and it needs to be attached to the ISP. It is the protection of the provider. You're basically saying, I don't believe that this ISP is meeting the health and welfare needs of the individual.
So I'm gonna play attorney on you for a second, and believe me, people get sued in our field. Happens all the time. So a plan is written, and you don't believe that it meets the health and the welfare needs of an individual, but you want to be the provider, so you just go ahead and sign it anyway. And a person dies. And someone decides to sue who? I guarantee you, you're the first on the list. Okay, because you're the service provider. So you're standing up there in front of an attorney who's grilling you in front of a judge. He says, so you knew this individual did X, Y, and Z, right? While you're under oath, you go, yep, I know it. And you're a party to an ISP that didn't address that. Yes, I was. And your administrative rules provide for the fact that you can write a dissenting opinion on specific matters, and you didn't do it. Yes, sir, that's correct. Yes, ma'am, that's correct. You're guilty of being what I call stupid. Because an attorney will tear you apart. And the judge will just look at you. And the judge will allow the attorney to tear you apart. And if you think I'm trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not trying to scare you. What I'm trying to tell you is that the ISP is a vital document for many, many, many different reasons. That ISP is there to provide for a good plan of service for an individual, and it is also there to protect you. Because God knows every day what you guys go through and all the things that that pop up that you have to take care of. You have to legitimately address risks in people's plans. You can't just gloss over them.
I mean, so in that question, how do you balance the individual specific aspect of that and making sure that an ISP is relative just specifically for an individual, but also not laying out a big realm of legal gray area, if that makes sense.
It's an art. It's not a science, it's an art.
I like science over art. I mean, I like a good bit of art, but I'm more of a science guy.
Well, you can use science, but you got to also use art. So, you know, I will go back to, you know, we are all human beings, folks. When I say this, it's not just people with disabilities. We are all human beings. So we all do things that aren't necessarily good for us. Every single one of us. We all have our own demons, whatever way you want to say it, okay? You have to address them. You have to have a plan of action. You have to figure out. So, you know, why does Johnny want to be a street hip hop person and hang around with drug dealers and gang members? Why does he want to do that? These are real situations, folks. I mean, I could give you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of people that not only I provided services to personally, but my clients provide, because you guys can't wait to call me and tell me. I get to hear them all. Okay. You have to get to the bottom of something before you can try and figure out how to get to the top of it. And that's the balance. How do you guys change and modify behavior every day, right? That's what you do for a living. So how do you get someone on board with that? How do you get this end closer to this end?
Well, I mean, like in an ISP, like we have outcomes, we have assessments, and we have narratives. And thankfully, as ISPs in Ohio are becoming more person-centric over the past, what, year and a half, 2 years, we're trying to get there. But in that, like, where does that legality come in there, where I may have an outcome, I may have an assessment where I'm trying to address something with an individual, but it also has layers of complication to it, and I want to include that in there relative to your point earlier.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to go back to the words person-centered. None of these concepts are new, folks. We've been talking about person-centered, not using the words person-centered for the 35 years I've been in this field. There's nothing new about it. It's just we figured out a couple new buzzwords, okay? It's always been individual service plan. That's what the I stands for in ISP. We've had these conversations and probably will before my 35 years in this field. So, I mean, these concepts are not new. The balance is not new. What has made our lives all more difficult is as society continues to change its viewpoints on what's okay, what's not okay, what do people have the right to do, what do people not have the right to do, as that continues to change, it makes everything, I don't want to use the word more difficult, I want to use the words more challenging, okay? Because, you know, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable today is different than 10 years ago and different than 20 years ago and different than 30 years ago, and that all affects our thought patterns and how we view things. So, I mean, I'll go back to the other section of the rule where it talks about, you know, you've got to take all of those things and you use science, but it's an art in how you put them together and you move forward. It's not 1 + 1 will equal 2. That's not what it is. So when you're looking at outcomes, what are you going to do in the process to get to that outcome? What is the stipulated outcome? The stipulated outcome for that street hip hop guy that wants to hang out with drug dealers and gang members, the outcome might be, hey, maybe I want to do something really productive in life and become part of society. A little different side of society, because that's certainly society, but you know, I don't think anybody aspires to be a drug dealer and a gang member. Now, I don't want to tell story after story after story, but you know, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world is a Catholic Jesuit priest in California who runs Homeboys. And you know, that priest, Boyle, has figured out how to get different gang members to work together in a bakery. He has defied all the odds of what, you know, anybody thinks that, you know, how he can change human behavior and help people change their own human behavior and their own view of themselves. And he'll be the first one to tell you, so you know, you want to change somebody's life like that? Get them a job. That'll be the first thing he says, get them a job. Give them self-worth. Give them something positive to focus on. And that's the art.
Okay, so dissenting opinion, important. And maybe if you tell the SSA you're going to write one, that might, bring them back to the drawing board to make sure that maybe you don't have to have that opinion, but it is important and it is your right to do that. SSA is also supposed to provide ongoing service plan coordination. And it basically focuses on the same things as originally. Review and revise the ISP every 12 months or more frequently. And here are the reasons that fall under that. And the number one is at the request of the individual or a member of the team. So that's you, right? So you're the one that knows if something has changed. And if an ISP needs to be, revisited, that you don't wait until the span is up and go, well, 6 months ago, he wasn't able to go to work anymore. That's after the fact. You have to be proactive on that when assessing the needs, when situations change. If they get a new provider, if the department reduced, denied, or terminated any services, all of these reasons, you need to go back to the drawing board on the ISP.
So let's go back to at the request of an individual or member of the team in which care revisions to an individual plan shall occur within 30 calendar days of the request. I get calls all the time from people who say, well, this is taking forever. We got to call a team meeting, blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. If you think that a certain section of an ISP needs to be revised, write the doggone addendum, send it to all the team members and the SSA, and ask if you can have a 5-minute Zoom meeting. These things don't have to take on some big formal once-a-year ISP process meeting. Someone has to initiate a conversation, someone has to share the information, and someone has to initiate it. It doesn't say who has to do that. It could be any team member, it could be the individual, it could be the SSA, it could be anybody. If you're waiting for somebody else to do it because you think it's their job, good luck with that. Because the amount of time that you will follow up and try and make sure that somebody else does their job, just go do it. It's a lot easier. You're going to spend the time anyway.
And the SSAs, they have a lot of individuals that are in their caseload. So they probably would appreciate your help of taking the initiative. I always appreciate when someone does work for me. So don't be afraid.
And as Carrie said, they're dependent upon you guys. You guys know what's going on every day. They don't know what's going on every day.
Again, under take following actions, explain to an individual at the time the individual is being recommended for enrollment in home and community-based waivers that they have an alternative, that this is an alternative to an ICF. It is their responsibility to know that and to be told that and to be told how this waiver is being funded and provide the individual with written notification and explanation of their rights. Explain.
Does everybody know what a state Medicaid fair hearing is?
Sorry,
Okay.
can you repeat that?
I said, does everybody know what a state Medicaid fair hearing is? Okay, so you see throughout this rule, it says recommend, 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 recommend. And every other rule we're going to read says recommend, 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 because it's not authorized until it's implemented. If an individual or the guardian is not okay with the plan as it is written, they can ask for a Medicaid state fair hearing. that Medicaid state fair hearing is a legal process. If they must be, an individual must be notified at the time services are developed, increased, or decreased every single time of their Medicaid state fair hearing rights. Sorry. So they can, and if you'd like, we'll send you all the information on it. They can request a Medicaid state fair hearing. If they do it within 15 days, then there is a stay on their services. So if someone wants to decrease their services, change it to OSOC or whatever, and they don't agree, if they ask for a Medicaid state fair hearing, those changes cannot take effect until their due process rights have been exhausted. So they go through a Medicaid state fair hearing with an impartial hearing officer from the Department of Medicaid, not DODD, not the county board. And if they don't like that result, they can actually go to court if they'd like, all the way up to the Supreme Court if they'd like. So when I say due process rights, those are all the steps that you can go through, and people do and have. So this is not a far-fetched thing. Anybody can disagree, not a provider, any individual or their guardian can disagree, and they can ask for the assistance from anybody whom they choose, and it doesn't have to be an attorney.
So basically what Gary just explained is kind of what the rest of this rule says. Advise, of their right to file a complaint, take necessary actions. If you scroll through here, you get to the point where it comes down to what is the due process that the individual has. So,
and it even gives you the rule references in the state statutes right there in the rule.
Yeah. So go ahead, Gary.
So what I'm going to tell you folks this, I'm going to say it very, very affectionately. You are all very bright people. They're all very intelligent people. It takes me 2 to 3 times, sometimes 4 times in reading an administrative rule until I think I understand it. I've done it for a living for a very, very long time, and I've actually authored a bunch of administrative rules when I was at the department. So I'm actually pretty good at it. It's not like picking up a novel. It's not that easy. You have to read it. You have to underline and underscore the words that need emphasis. You need to go back and read it. You need to go back and read it again, because there is a ton of information just in that rule alone. And it's real easy to gloss over things because, our normal reading isn't like this. I mean, this is very specific. Every sentence means something. It's not like picking up a novel.
Yep. So I know
like I said, it's a minimum of 2 to 3 times I have to go through an administrative rule until I feel comfortable with it.
So I know we sent some of these rules out to you and asked you to read them before the meeting. I challenge you to reread them now with a little bit of the knowledge of what the words mean and how to interpret them, and see if it means something different to you the second time or the third time around. Gary, I think we'll do free choice of provider real quick because we're running out of time, and this is a quick one, and you already kind of went over a lot of this one already. So again, there's a whole rule that specifically is for the purpose of establishing responsibilities of the county board for assuring individuals' rights to attain home and community-based services from a qualified and willing provider. So this whole rule kind of spells out what responsibilities are here. Notification of free choice of providers, assistance with provider selection process and procedural safeguards. The county board shall notify each individual at the time of enrollment and at least annually of their right to choose a qualified and willing provider. And it's, you know, as we said, you got to be qualified and willing, right? You can't just be willing. Not everybody is set up to handle sex offenders. And so you have to be qualified. Individual may choose agency providers, independent provider, or a combination. They may choose from all qualified and willing providers. Statewide, this is a statewide plan, it's not countywide, so they can, they live in one county, they can get services from providers in other counties. They can choose to receive services from a different provider at any time. And they can choose to have homemaker personal care in a licensed facility. Is choosing both the place of residence and the homemaker personal care, but maintains free choice of provider for all other home and community-based services and the right to move to another setting at any time. These SSA will assist the individual with the provider selection process if the individual requests assistance. So county board.
So the definition of willing and qualified, if you are certified, you are qualified. With the exception of you can't hold yourself out to do something that you have no expertise in. So I'm a CPA, I don't do tax work, folks. Don't call me up. I'll tell you to go to somebody else. And willing means you also have to be willing to provide the services. So if you're an established agency in Trumbull County and you don't want to do services anywhere other than Trumbull County, you don't have to. You don't have to expand because someone wants you to. So under willing, that's what it means. Now you cannot say, well, I'm not gonna provide services to you because you're a female under the age of 3. You can't discriminate and say you're not willing for all the discriminatory things that are covered. But you can say, gosh, you may have needs that we're not qualified to handle, or gee, we only do services in this part of the state and you want us to come all the way down to Cincinnati and we can't do that. You are allowed to do that.
So, I mean, the rule under C1D is, it's got a lot going to it. So an individual choosing to receive HPC in a licensed residential facility is choosing both the place of residence and the HPC provider, but maintains a free choice of providers for all other home and community-based services.
Correct.
So the after the comma part, I'm trying to suss out a little bit, because home and community-based services, I'm trying to figure out what that means relative to the HPC services that the individual is choosing in the first sentence there.
Okay, that's the definition of waiver services. They are HCBS, home and community-based services. That is the definition of a waiver service. There's transportation day services, interpreter services, home delivered meals, all of those services within the waiver. They're saying for that specific service, if you live in a licensed facility, you have de facto picked your homemaker personal care provider.
Okay, so what I'm getting out of that is that if you're living in a licensed facility or you're living in a licensed home, you have your HPC services defined. You're able to define any other services you want, transportation, interpreter, any of the rest. You can add any of the rest of that you want, but your HPC is within the licensed facility.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So this also spells out that the SSA shall assist the individual as requested, accessing the department's website to conduct a search for the qualified and willing providers. Share objective information with the individual about providers. And I think Carrie probably was telling us, that's a fine line for them. But, they are the ones that know the best, and they are probably always striving to be within that, giving the objective information. Make available to all qualified providers in the county that have expressed an interest in serving additional individuals, making sure they're having that opportunity, and scheduling and participating in these interviews. I didn't really have anything else on this, Gary. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
So there is no approval process at the county level for you to be a provider in XYZ county. You just have to make it known that you're willing to, or not willing to.
Gary, we have like 5 minutes left. Maybe this would be a good area when we're talking about willing provider to talk a little bit about, Gary and I have heard both that sometimes providers are like, well, we don't want to make the SSA or the county board mad because that's where we get all our referrals. And Gary will tell you that that's probably not your best plan of action.
Yeah, and again, this is not an anti-SSA training, so I really mean it when I say that we need to create respectful relationships. Not I like you and you like me relationships. Okay, so we all know that the world's full of what we call people pleasers, and they think that if I please you, then you'll like me, and if you like me, then you'll do what I want you to do. That's the furthest thing from the truth. So I like to use heinous analogies, so I'll use one. So, I like to beat my wife. So she thinks that if she cooks me better meals and does my laundry and all that good stuff, and takes the dog out, and I take the dog out, and all that good stuff, then my life will get better, right? That's absolutely untrue. It just raises the bar. That's all it does. Okay, so if you think that pleasing somebody is going to get you where you want to go, most of the time it gets you to be a doormat, so that you can get stepped on some more. You need to create professional, respectful relationships with everybody you deal with the ISP team. Because I don't know about you all, if I respect you, I end up liking you. I tend to gravitate towards people I respect. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but and you don't have to have the same opinion as me. In fact, you can have a totally different opinion than me. But if I respect the fact that your opinion is well grounded in how you think, and I respect why you have your opinion, I would tend to like you a lot, even though you may think totally different than me on subject matters. So what I encourage you to do is to, and what we're going to try and teach throughout this, is how to have respectful conversations and how to gain respect. And throughout my life, I used to think that if I had the most knowledge in the world, that I could walk around. You ever watching the movie Walking Tall? Anybody watch that? Guys walking around with a baseball bat behind, just kind of hidden back here, because if you crossed him, he'd just take you out. That was the movie. So I used to think that if I had the most knowledge, then I could win because I had more knowledge than somebody else. I knew more about it than anybody else did. Well, knowledge is extremely important. It really is. But how you convey knowledge and how you communicate knowledge is more important. It doesn't make any difference what I say if you can't hear me. So I could be the smartest person on the planet, but if I say it in a way that you can't hear me, it doesn't make any difference because I was an inadequate conveyor of that knowledge. So I'm going to say it more than one more time throughout this process is if it's not working, it is incumbent upon you to try something different. It is not incumbent upon the other person to change to be the way you are. Because if that's what you're waiting for, good luck. If you tell your kids to go clean up the room because I said so, does it work? It doesn't, right? It's the same exact analogy. It's you create respectful relationships more by asking questions than you do by telling somebody something. So one of the things that I have found to be very effective in an ISP meeting is if I don't like the way the conversation's going, or if I don't think it's going the right way, I just ask the person, so why do you think that way? Or what would, you know, why have you come to those conclusions? And I ask them questions. It's very annoying, by the way, because some people get really uncomfortable when you do that. But ask why. There may be a really legitimate reason why. And if you can't get the opportunity to hear it, then you can't hear them. That's what I mean by creating respectful relationships. Understand the person that you're talking to. Understand where they're coming from. Because it ain't all about you. Or I have to tell myself it ain't all about me. It's hard in this world today. It's very hard because we're very self-centered people. I say it when I say the word we because we are. Okay? I see Connie smiling. She's heard me say it more than once before.
Well, now I know who FC2 is.
That's right. It's Connie down there.
Okay, a couple of things. Someone put in here, these are the handouts, correct? You know what I'm going to do? I sent you some of them. I'm going to PDF the PowerPoint and put all of the documents for the training, and I'm going to zip it into a file and I'll email it to everybody so you can have that. I'll do that today. And then someone asked, does anyone have an ISP meeting checklist that they would like to share? So if somebody has one of those, if you want to share that with me, I will get that to everybody else also. If anyone has one, so someone doesn't have to create the will. And then I think at some point, Carrie put this in there, and I think I missed it because I wasn't watching, but she says it is the rules. The SSAs have to have the plan to the provider 15 days prior to start. We have to have an addendum to continue previous plan addressing immediate health and safety if the plan is going to be more than 15 days to get to the provider. So she was just.
That's in the rule, by the way.
It's in the rule. So she was saying that. So I will send all of that to you, and we'll get through the rest of the rules. Some of them will hit a little lighter. The homemaker personal care rule is probably the big one that we'll hit on the next meeting. So with your new knowledge of what the words mean, give that a read a few times, and we'll discuss that one. That one's got a lot of good information in it. I believe our next one is Friday. Is that right? I don't have my calendar open. I got a few nods. Okay, so 10 o'clock on Friday. Anyone else have any other questions right now? I really appreciate you guys all being here and communicating and sharing ideas, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday. If anyone has any questions between now and then, you'll get my email. You can just send me an email. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.